Spot welding is an important method of joining aluminum or steel parts. In the spot welding operation, the parts are clamped together by two electrodes under a pressure known as weld pressure. When the machine is fired, the current flows from one electrode through the metal sheets to the other electrode. During this process, additional pressure known as forge pressure is applied automatically. The current, aided by the resistance of the metal sheets to the passage of this current, generates enough heat to fuse or weld the sheets together at the point where the current comes through. Pressure on the sheets is continued after the current has passed through. The periods when pressure is applied form the welding cycle. Squeeze time, the period during which pressure is applied before firing. Weld time, the firing period during which current or heat is applied. And hold time, the period after firing during which pressure is continued. Off time is the period during which pressure is released and the work is moved for the next weld. Since the welding current travels through a localized area, the individual weld or spot is very small. Because the voltage of the electrodes is low, about 10 volts, you're perfectly safe in working around the machine. This is a good strong weld made on parts that fit and that have been thoroughly cleaned. These welds are cracked and burned. They are weak and might fail. Stop work as soon as you see that you're making poor welds. A poor weld can be caused not only by improper setup of the machine, but by material which isn't clean, parts that don't fit together properly, and by faulty electrode tips. To produce good, strong pressure, heat, and time must be set accurately before you start a new job. For instance, maximum weld and forge pressures are set by control rods, one for weld pressure and one for forge pressure. The pressure settings are then completed by putting the head in operation and adjusting the firing switch so that the machine will fire at the exact moment that the specified weld pressure is reached. The second factor of the welding cycle, current or heat, must also be regulated. For this purpose, a voltage regulator is located on the control panel, as are most of the controls and gauges. Condenser switches determine the amount of current stored up for use at each firing of the machine. In the back of this machine is the control for setting the exact voltage of the current. Three of the dials on the panel adjust the squeeze, hold, and off times of the welding cycle. All machine adjustments are made to set up the specified pressure, current, and time conditions at the electrodes. Each electrode assembly consists of an electrode holder, a threaded adapter which is screwed to the holder, and the electrode, which is wedged into the adapter. water line runs through the holder and adapter into the electrode for cooling during the welding operation. The effective part of the tip extends from the tapered end to the hollow portion. The electrodes are moved by two pedals: the head positioning pedal, which raises or lowers the welding head, and the weld pedal, which brings the electrodes together against the metal. This also starts the welding cycle according to the conditions set up by adjusting the machine's pressure, current, and time controls. On the job, wear goggles, gloves, and an apron as safeguards against possible flashouts of material. This access cover is a typical job for spot welding. When you're ready to start a new job like this, the machine must be adjusted according to specifications. So, refer to the setup card on which all machine adjustments are specified. If you have questions about the card, ask your supervisor. Now, first of all, if the machine has been idle, unlock it. Be sure the weld switch is off. If it were not off, the machine might be fired accidentally. Next, turn on the machine. A red light indicates that it's charging. The light in the center flashes on when the machine is warmed up. Your setup card tells you what size electrode tips to use. For this job, you'll have to install new ones. To remove the old electrodes, unscrew the adapter from the holder. That small tube is the water line. Insert a rod into the adapter and drive the electrode out. Remove the lower electrode in the same way. Now get the specified tips for both the upper and lower arms. Check the amount of metal at the tips of the electrodes. The effective tip should be at least 1/8 of an inch. Wedge the upper electrode into the adapter. Slide the unit over the water line as far as it will go. Screw the adapter in place and tighten it. Then install the lower electrode. Next, select test strips of metal which have the same specifications as the parts to be welded. Step on the pedals to bring the electrodes together against the strips. This further seats the electrodes. The machine doesn't fire because the weld switch is still off. Stepping on the positioning pedal turns on the water, so check to be sure that the water system is on and that there are no leaks. With a special paddle, polish the electrodes lightly. The paddle is covered with abrasive cloth. Now make the settings for maximum pressure. Following the setup card, set maximum weld pressure at 21. And maximum forge pressure at 15. Next, turn on the forge switch. Then, to get the exact pressure settings, put trial pieces between the electrodes and hit the pedals to exert tip pressure. Adjust the firing switch till weld pressure registers 6 and forge pressure 15. The dial hesitates at 6 and then jumps to 15. Now refer to the setup card again for the heat or current settings. Set the switches in the back of the machine to P and to 1. Then, at the control panel again, turn on the condenser switch, rated at 400 as specified. Next, push the Start Charge button and turn the voltage regulator slowly until the voltmeter registers 2,000 volts. Consult the setup card for the time settings. First, squeeze time. Turn the dial marked high pressure period to 1. Then hold time. Turn the dial marked hold period to 2. Next, turn the off time dial to 25. And set the repeat switch to repeat. Now you can safely turn on the weld switch. Test the setup with sample strips of the same specifications as the production parts. Hold the strips tightly together and start welding. The machine fires under the conditions fixed by the control settings. Check the dial again to be sure you have correct weld and forge pressure. Your trial welds will be tested by the inspection department. If they meet specifications, your machine is ready for the production run. The parts of the access door come to you prepared, cleaned, and held tightly together by fasteners. Be sure the parts fit well. Instructions for spacing and locating the welds may be found on the back of the setup card, or they may be gotten from your supervisor. Position the work and hit the weld pedal. Hold the part level and at right angles to the electrode tips. Gauge the required distance between the welds by eye and lift the work to the next position. Do not scrape it across the lower electrode. Don't weld too near the edge. Welds made too close to the edge are apt to be weak and result in cracking of the material or so-called spit-outs. weld evenly. Keep the lines of your welds parallel. These are good welds, clean, shiny, and round, without surface defects. These welds are bad and weak. In the first column, notice the cracks and the burned, discolored surfaces. The welds in the second column are not round and have not been fully formed. The welds in the third column result from too much pressure. Dirty material or poorly fitting parts can also cause weak welds. During welding, the electrode tips must be kept clean. Otherwise, the weld surface may become discolored and the electrodes may stick. To clean the tips, raise the welding head, turn the switch to tip clean position, and adjust the tip cleaning pressure valve. Place the special cleaning paddle on the bottom electrode and lower the upper electrode against the paddle. The paddle is clamped under the correct pressure for cleaning. Polish the tips lightly and carefully so that you don't change the contour of the tips. Blow away any dirt or dust with an air hose. Set the tip clean switch back to weld position and you're ready to continue welding. Remember, hold the parts level and lift them across the lower electrode. Maintain sufficient edge distance and weld evenly. Keep watching the quality of your welds. If you make a bad weld, stop work at once and consult your supervisor. Spot welding is an effective method of joining parts and assemblies. If you set up and operate your machine carefully, you'll turn out strongly welded parts.